and joining the Unique ID project. And after the Unique ID project, I endeavored in this experiment with Matt. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, hi, I'm Matt. I was born in Kerala, moved to the US with my whole family when I was 14. Then, went to high school, went to college in the US, worked for a little bit, went to postgraduate studies, and then came back to India to work on the Unique ID project because I believed it was a once-in-a-lifetime sort of opportunity that I couldn't pass up. And that's where I met Tushar, and we did our 100 rupees a day experiment, which we are here to talk about today. And then now we're aspiring entrepreneurs, as mentioned in the intro.
Absolutely. So let's get to it. Who is an average Indian? For that matter, who is an Indian? That's a question that certainly bothered us a lot, while we were in the Unique ID project, interfacing the various cross-sections of society in India. What are an average Indian's constraints and challenges? What are the problems that an average Indian faces? What are his aspirations? What are his goals? What are his motivations? These are some things we want to understand very deeply, perhaps because we felt that we didn't quite live the lifestyles of an average Indian. Before we jump into what we know about an average Indian, let me just have a quick show of hands. How many of you believe you are a representative of an average Indian? Just raise your hand. Do you think you're approximately an average Indian? Majority of you believe so. Let me also ask you, how many of you, or for that matter, how many of your fathers or mothers earn more than 5,000 rupees a month? In the top half of the country, I think have forgotten where the average is. My dear friends, the average is very low. It's indeed very low.
To the 5,000 example, lives on 100 rupees a day, which is less than 5,000. Obviously, this is excluding rent. Even if you factor in rent or whatever you pay for housing, if you own the place where you live, it's about 150 rupees a day. It's still under 5,000 rupees. So, where do we get this? This is, and I should add the caveat that this is only the statistical mean, right? So this is the entire GDP of India divided by the population. 100 rupees a day actually puts you at the 75th percentile. So you're not even, the median Indian anymore. You're much higher than the median Indian. So we lived on 100 rupees a day for three weeks in Bangalore. And then the last week we lived on 32 rupees a day because, as I said, the 100 is the 75th percentile and 32 is the 37th percentile. So combining the two, approximately we became average, or so we tell ourselves.
Well, we tried to find out, right? I mean, you must realize that 37%, more than a third of this country, lives less than rupees 32 a day for everything. And that's a very little amount of money, my friends. That's almost, you're talking about 1,000 rupees a month, right? And as the Dr. Chandrasekhar was pointing out in the morning as well, 75% of this country lives on less than 100 rupees a day. So keep those statistics in mind. Interestingly, we also realized that Planning Commission came out with its poverty line estimates around the same time we were doing this experiment to say that 32 rupees should be the poverty line. Which also astonished us as to why is the poverty line so low, and is it even survivable to live on the poverty line, and also became a part of our experiment to analyze that. Before we jump into the findings of our experiment, which is what we really need to talk about, we thought we'll give you a quick flavor of what life was like on 100 rupees and actually more so on 32 rupees. So NDTV did a little cover on us about when we were doing this experiment. Courtesy to them, I'd like to show you a quick 2.5 minute video that talks about how our life was, and we'll come back to the findings.
To know firsthand if it's possible to live on 32 rupees a day, the cutoff set by the Planning Commission for the poverty line. Tushar and Matthew Cherian, both graduates from top American universities, wanted to learn more about India. So, 4 weeks ago, they started living on 100 rupees a day, which they thought was what the average Indian gets. But after the Planning Commission's 32 rupees poverty line definition kicked up a storm, these two former Wall Street employees decided to further scale down their income and chose the house of a farmer in Karvachal, a small town in Kerala, to live it out.
We wanted to experience the average Indian lifestyle, and that was, other than rent, it's about 3,000 rupees a month, and that comes down to 100 rupees a day, like Tushar was saying. And our plan was to do that for a month and see the constraints and the hard choices we had to make at such a paltry amount. So to go from that to 32, which the Planning Commission suggested about 4 days before we began, was another choice that we made, on the spot, just to see if it was possible at all.
And within weeks, the effects of the experiment started showing on the 26-year-olds. Both lost around 2 to 5 kilograms and often felt dizzy from their protein deficient diet. From the 32 rupees, they could manage to get barely 17 rupees on an average per food.
If we were a hard laborer, we would probably get arthritis and various other diseases that come with it. In that 7, which is the non-food expenses, it severely restricts our choices, right? It means that we have to live and sort of work around. We can't really afford to pursue our dreams beyond that.
The entrepreneurs have tabulated their
Laborers, most of the people who live at 32 are hard laborers who do work in the field or on a construction site all day. So clearly they're not getting enough calories, which explains this figure, right? I mean, these are the kind of people who do hard labor and hard work in the fields every day. Yet, if you were working out, if I worked out that much in a gym, I would look a lot bigger. And clearly these people are not getting bigger because, they don't get enough nutrition in what they eat. And especially, they don't get enough protein in what they eat. So we have one of the recommendations we made to the government was that the PD is 5 rupees a kilometer, the bus is 1.5 rupees a kilometer, and if you had a bicycle, obviously it's much cheaper, right? But what does this mean? This means that most Indians in this income bracket are restricted to this 5-kilometer circle of life. They cannot leave this circle, right? Because if you travel a lot, you're sacrificing on basic necessities like food. So what does this mean, right? This means that they don't have access to, aspirational goods like a good education, like good health care. They're stuck to their little circle and they have to heavily depend on their social network to meet basic needs. And this picture given my context, this picture is self-explanatory, right? Why do entire families ride on a motorcycle, right? Because this is the cheapest way to get around. Maybe a dangerous way, but it is certainly the cheapest way to get around.
Certainly.
And what do you do and that was at 100 rupees a day. What do you do at 32? 32, you cannot even afford a bicycle. You have to walk. So this is the picture from when we walked to the backwaters in Kerala. We walked 40 kilometers each way to go there and come back. So this is from that trip.
Yeah, see, we tracked a lot of our own lifestyle during the experiment, right? The statistics, the figures, all that information that you saw was because we were tracking everything we were doing, how much we're sleeping, how much we're eating, what are the calorie distribution, how much we're working out, even how much we are spending on non-food items. We were really tracking everything in detail. But we were also tracking the lives of others around us, people in the same income bracket, people living in the same sort of income levels, as to what are they spending things on. And one of the phenomena we found at around 6 p.m., 7 p.m. in the night in Bangalore, in a very small area, is a phenomenon that you may well be aware of, is this. Right? Any guesses for what this is? It's a classic liquor store, right? And we saw a lot of crowding around that. We also saw a lot of pan walas and cigarette walas and tobacco walas around. So we decided to go interview people, and what we found is that people consume these alcoholic and tobacco substances in a much more significant degree that we believed, as in the upper half of the elite, right? Maybe they do not understand the negative consequences, or even if they do, maybe they're addicted and they're therefore helpless to actually do anything about it. But the reality is that addiction in their lives is crippling for their personal and their family's financial as well as other health, and it's not just crippling for them, right? As a nation overall, it's crippling for the society. How much crippling is it? Like how deep this problem is, something we realized when we did some analysis on it. So if you look here, this is a table of the daily income of 100 rupees minus any addiction expenses, assuming the person is having no alcohol. So in an average case scenario, suppose the person has about 2 packs of bidis and has about 15 gutka packs, you can see that he only has 60 rupees to take home. And this, my friends, is actually the quantum of tobacco-linked substances consumed by the average and by the people living at this income bracket approximately on a daily basis. What happens when you throw in a bottle of liquor? This figure falls to 15 rupees. 85 rupees is spent on all this stuff, you only have 15 rupees to take home, and guess what, if you're severely addicted, you're almost taking no money home that day when you had that bottle of liquor. In fact, you might be taking minus 15, which means you are stealing out of your wife's money or your children's money to go towards your addiction expenses. This is a terrible problem because you are not, as we rightly said in the video, this is not additional income here, we are substituting at that point. You're substituting out of your education and healthcare expenses to go towards this, and therefore remaining in the poverty cycle. how are the government intervention plans been for de-addiction centers, etc.? I think it's still a cry that's been too short. Then we need to do significantly greater measures on this issue. The last element, I think the key finding we had about our experiment is on communications. As you can see, the last 5-6 years, mobile explosion has happened in this country. Almost 3/4 of this nation has a mobile phone, and my friends, it has been a hugely powerful enabler for this society and the economy. People today do everything on the mobile phone, from sending money to their families, to transacting on it, to actually to understanding about their human rights, to political advocacy, finding jobs, better employment opportunities, calling a doctor to find out if they have an issue in healthcare, calling the microfinance institution to find out if they have any delay in payments. It's become a very critical aspect of lifestyle in India. But about 1/4 of the country is still deprived from it, because they can't afford mobile expenses. So we felt mobile inclusion is an important deal. To tell you more on that, let's look at the life readers at 100 rupees and on 32 rupees again. On 100 rupees, we clearly spent around 17 rupees on communications out of 100, right? Which around like 8 or 9 on internet, 8 or 9 on phones, about 1 on SMS. On 32, that went down to only 1.5 on SMS and 0.5 for incoming. What does that mean is that you see that the average Indian, certainly in the bottom 75th percentile of the economy, can't really afford internet, cannot afford data communications, which results in severe blockages from an aspirational perspective, right? Because they can't really get the same access to knowledge, healthcare, education that we guys do. We easily Google it up. We easily go through our email and find out what's happening. They do not have these tools with them. They also cannot make outgoing calls very effectively. Incoming is there. Missed call works, but it only works to an extent. If you are being beaten up by your husband, you can't call the police because you don't have any money on your balance. So we feel that mobile inclusion, certainly from an internet perspective, but also to an extent from the voice perspective, is very critical and is another very important recommendation we made to the government. So what have we done since the experiment, right? We talked about making recommendations to the experiment. We've written a blog, rupees100aday.com, where we talk about our insights, findings, talk about all of our recommendations. We urge you to check it. We also have made recommendations to the government and academic institutions, right? We met the Planning Commission, the National Advisory Council, various academic institutions, and told at various platforms our key recommendations. But I think two are important to point out. One is what Matt alluded to, is that have more protein in PDS. We can't have a nation of malnutrition. We have not provided enough. We have a very carbs dependent public distribution system. Rice, wheat and sugar. We need to have proteins in that. Otherwise our country will always be malnourished and suffering potentially from arthritis and other early retirement problems. The second one is mobile inclusion needs to be, on the PDS itself, we also feel that kerosene is actually being completely misused. It's not being used for cooking, it's actually being used for lighting, and only to the people who get it. Most of it gets leaked out. So our recommendation was reduce kerosene, increase protein in the PDS. Change the mix, tweak it a little towards more relevance. Second one, of course, give people subsidy for internet on mobile phones, because everybody has mobile phones, everybody has 2G and 2.5G networks on it. Just let people access internet through that, and suddenly you'll have the whole country connected for less than 10,000 crores annually if you were to only subsidize 100 rupees per month for the BPL families. But more on that on our blog.
So obviously we ended the experiment a few months back. What have we done since then, right? So living on our experiment, you saw this in the video too. We noticed that we kept track of everything we ate, right? We had this detailed calorie tracking mechanism where we kept track of not just calories but also carbohydrates and proteins, from which the protein recommendation came out. We realized that while the average and the poor Indian has a problem with malnourishment, the middle class students, that some of which we have pointed out here. So now we are trying to see through this venture that Tushar and I started, Cares Ventures, the website is cares.com. We're trying to see if we can come up with ways to reduce this problem, right? Because the overweight and obesity age of 35 and 64 is slated to lose 17 years of their life from cardiovascular diseases by the year 2030. So if this is not checked, as a nation, our future is clearly, will be hampered, the bright future that we all hope to have for our country. So we're doing our venture around this measure to use technology, to use handheld devices, to use social pressures, to use other offline channels such as doctors, and your caretakers in society, link them up through technology to help you reach your health and fitness goals.
So, guys, this was what is CARE is, right? It's an example of us identifying and deeply immersing with a problem, trying to find a solution around that problem, and then therefore creating a solution, technology-enabled solution against that problem. We believe this is not just a case of us, right? You all, everybody in this room, everybody in this country can choose to do the same. There are problems all around you, right? All kinds of issues and situations. We urge you to actually go out there. First of all, understand these problems, right? So engage with people who are around you. Be sensitive to those who are not endowed. Talk to your people who are less privileged around you. Maybe in your neighborhood, maybe people who work for you, maybe your maids, drivers, servants. Deeply understand their problems. Right? Again, show of hands. How many of you know where your maids and drivers come from? Which city? Okay, how many of you have maids or assistants or servants, first of all? Again, majority of you. But how many of you know which city or town they come from? Okay, about a third of you. How many of you know the actual block they come from? Very, very few people. Anyone knows the elected representatives in that block? One person. So the point is, understand their problems. They are facing much more difficult situations than you are. Try to get a sense of what's wrong. And more importantly, be the change you wish to see in the world. A person who we all revere a lot, a person who was a father of our nation, said that more than half a century ago. We really should look at that and try to seek inspiration. That's something that inspired us as well. Understand those problems, find solutions. You are all highly privileged. You're all highly enabled, you're educated, you have the resources to do so. So we urge you to get there.
And based on our experience doing the startup, what we think is, you can make the most difference if you do something that you are good at, right? I mean, don't do something just because a volunteer opportunity exists, although those things are important. Try to pick whatever you're good at and try to do it, because you will have the most impact this way.
I think that's our message, and hopefully you walked away with some insights from this experiment. We'd love to connect more on it offline or through our blog, rupees100aday.com. Thanks a lot for having us here.
Thank you.
Matt and Tushar, thanks a lot for sharing that with the crowd of Kakinada. Now I'd like to request Dr. Chandrasekhar to honor them with a certificate that we're partnered with growtrees.com. So we have planted 10 trees in your name at Chintamani, Karnataka. And I'd like to request Dr. Chandrasekhar to do that.
Thank you so much. We certainly hope to wish Chintamani and look and take care of our trees.
Yeah, Chintamani is a place which has acute water shortage, and Grow Trees Initiative has been trying to reforest that whole place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.